Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Johnson. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Let me pass on the regrets of our chairman, Pete Mathias. Unfortunately, he's under the weather and couldn't attend today. I had a couple of items we wanted to share with you today. First is, I wanted to provide some feedback on at least our first look at the impact of the implementation of the strategic pricing plan on the direct serve customers in the Valley. As all of you are probably aware, the Tennessee Valley Industrial Committee represents many of the direct serve customers in the Valley and also represents thousands of jobs as well as hundreds of millions of dollars of economic impact in the Valley. So anything obviously, and almost all of us are electricity intensive, so anything that happens in terms of TVA rates has significant impact on us. So far, as you all know, you were all involved in the process, that this was a collaborative effort that took about 2 years and a lot of work from TVA, TVPTA, and TVIC to put in place the new rate structure, which went into place after your approval in October. So far, most of our industries are adjusting to the new rate structure. We're having to operationalize it. It's a major change for many of the industries in that they're getting constant price signals because of the more granularity of the time of use rate. And for many, it's not that big of an adjustment. They have plants around the U.S. that are already on time of use. For others, it's more difficult. But I think the bottom line is, at least so far, we haven't heard from any of our members. Or at least no members have come back to us and said that we cannot use this rate. This rate is impossible to use. So we haven't heard that. In fact, we haven't heard anybody saying that it's significantly undermined their competitive position in whatever industry they participate in. So I think that's good news. But we also want to, we also have to recognize that there is some seasonality to this rate. And so in terms of final determination on the impact of the rate, it's going to take us a full year probably to figure it out. But we thought it would be useful to at least provide some feedback that we have not seen any significant negative impact. And nor have we seen any significant positive impact, I think, from any of the direct serve industrials with the change in rate. So it's been more or less status quo, I think, in terms of the impact on their cost structure. And of course, anytime we get up here and have the opportunity to speak with you, we want to talk about cost management. And today there are 3 issues that we want to bring to your attention that we're concerned with. The first, of course, are the costs associated with the path forward on coal combustion residuals. We've reviewed the various options that are detailed in the draft EIS, and I guess we want to make sure that full consideration is given on any of these options in terms of any costs associated with adopting any of these measures and the impact that it will have on rates. In today's environment, we have utilities surrounding us who are much more natural gas intensive in terms of their fuel mix and TVA. With the drop in natural gas, we're seeing these utilities improving their competitive position vis-a-vis TVA. So of course, any additional costs that are that the TVA takes on in terms of working with the combustion coal residuals, our coal combustion residuals will even widen the competitive position of TVA versus the surrounding utilities. The second item is the concern over the resolution of the TVA's underfunded pension plan. We are obviously not qualified to weigh in on what that resolution should be, and of course, knowing TVA as we do and the character of TVA, we expect it will be a fair resolution. We just ask that in any resolution that due consideration be given to the costs that are incurred and the potential impact on rates. And finally, there's the Clean Power Plan. I think everybody here is probably aware that on Tuesday the Supreme Court issued a stay on the Clean Power Plan. And really what that means is that the implementation of the Clean Power Plan is put on hold until the court resolves the other suits. The courts resolve the other suits that they're facing in terms of the authority of EPA to implement the Clean Power Plan. And our legal experts have taken a quick look at it, and they've determined that it may be many years before this is resolved. So I guess the ask that we have of you is that we recognize in the last IRP that there were metrics there that were aligned somewhat, or maybe to a large extent, with things that you would expect to, or opportunities you might want to take advantage of through your expectation of what's going to happen under the Clean Power Plan. So our ask is go back and revisit those metrics, look at them, and just make sure that the metrics are supported with or without a Clean Power Plan, and in particular without a Clean Power Plan. If your determination is that they aren't, then we would ask that any decisions that are made that were somewhat weighted by an expectation of any outcomes from the Clean Power Plan be revisited. Obviously for TVIC, it's all about managing controllable costs and their impact on rates. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Lloyd. We generally don't have surprises at our meeting, but we do have one today. I'm going to give you a hint so that when the person introduces this person, you'll be really ready for it. We have a 97-year-old Navy wave in our presence that will be introduced in a few minutes. So I'll tell you more than that. We welcome those joining us in person today or by watching on the TVA website. We do still have you, Pete, is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
The quorum is present. I now call the meeting to order. General Counsel Sherry Quirk will serve as our secretary and parliamentarian today. We have a limited number of items for consideration today. Several administrative adjustments. We expect this to be shorter than the usual meeting. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our November board meeting. They're located behind tab 2 in your book, in your board notebooks. Do we have a motion to approve? And a second. All in favor? Minutes are approved. We would now like to turn to the President's report from our CEO, Bill Johnson. Bill?
Thank you, Chair Rich. Good morning, everyone here in the audience and watching online, and to you, Pete, also. It is always a pleasure to be in Chattanooga, home of one of TVA's largest and most technologically advanced customers, the Electric Power Board here. This is a city that's known for economic growth and entrepreneurship, as the county mayor told us this morning. In fact, Chattanooga has the first downtown innovation center of any mid-sized city in the country. That district is anchored by a former TVA building, the Edney building, and the area serves as a connecting point for new businesses and startups. And we think this is important because innovation and technologies are keys to the future, not of TVA in the region, but the entire country. And this requires well-educated, skilled employees for the future. And TVA actually plays a small role in this, but an important one. We work with schools in Chattanooga and across the region to help build student interest in careers in the future, engineering, technology. And one of the ways we do this is through after-school robotics clubs. We support robotics clubs in more than 500 Valley schools, including more than 60 here in the Chattanooga area. And these teams design their own robots that compete in a series of missions. And two of our directors, Director Evans and Director Walter, I know you had the opportunity to see robotics team in action recently in Memphis. And I heard that you enjoyed it. That event was one of more than 20 competitions we're sponsoring this year, including a state championship. This is like the Final Four here in Chattanooga in April. So a number of TVA employees and retirees volunteer their time to help students learn and grow through these activities, and hopefully we're growing some good future TVA employees as part of this effort. And speaking of TVA employees, Chattanooga is a home of more than 3,000 TVA employees. It's the nerve center of operations for the TVA power system. Employees here at the nearby Sequoia nuclear plant and across the Tennessee Valley are keeping the lights on for our customers. As you know, safety and reliability are our watchwords at all times, and I am pleased to report today that our safety performance is improving this year, even as we have experienced extreme weather over the last couple months. Speaking of the weather, my recollection is this is the 4th year in a row we've had this February meeting in Chattanooga, and it's snowed on us every year for the last 4 years, so I am going to speak to the county mayor about that. The weather has been unusual and has presented some unusual challenges for us. Since I last reported in November, we've experienced the warmest December and the warmest first quarter on record. Also one of the wettest Decembers on record. In fact, rainfall across the region was about 184% of normal. Gunnersville Reservoir, for example, on Christmas Day, received more than 9 inches of rain in less than 24 hours. That's a lot of rain. It came with storms and tornadoes, Christmas Eve through New Year's, and transmission lines were damaged in Mississippi, Kentucky, and Tennessee. I see my friend Ronnie Rowland from Mississippi sitting there. He can confirm that fact. TVA employees worked around the clock to protect facilities and minimize the impact to customers. They operated the river system to avert flood damage in the valley and helped the Army Corps of Engineers control flooding on the Ohio. Without the TVA dams and the efforts of everybody involved, severe flooding would have occurred all along the Tennessee River, from Bristol to Paducah. And we estimate that the value of the damage averted by that system was about $130 million alone. And that wasn't the end. Then came January, one of the most powerful storms to hit the Northeast since 1950. Brought more than 12 inches of snow and ice to western Kentucky, 14 inches to parts of Tennessee, and even a couple of inches of snow in Mississippi. So again, everybody went to work. TVA employees were on the job around the clock, working in control center, power plants, out in the field, on transmission towers. And this work was conducted extremely safely, which is always our first goal. We're in close communication with our customers. Their crews like ours were on the job, keeping the lights on and working safely. And then again last week, we had another round of this. Tornadoes and damaging storms moved all across the valley. So I just want to say here, I appreciate the employees of TVA, the employees of the local power company, the emergency response people, everybody who gets called out in these extreme situations for their service to the people of the valley. So weather doesn't just affect operations, it affects finances also. Extreme mild temperatures in the first quarter meant power sales were down for us and all utilities across the eastern part of the U.S. For the first quarter, our sales were down about 8 cents and our revenue about 5% compared with the first quarter last year. Remember last year that first quarter was extremely cold, so a big difference in the weather. This resulted in a small net loss for the quarter, which is actually normal course for us. We budget for a loss in the first quarter when power usage is typically lower. The loss was a little bigger than we had budgeted for. But fortunately, these circumstances highlight the importance of our commitment to continuous improvement and cost management. There was some good out of the rain. It demonstrated the value of our diverse generating portfolio, and particularly hydro. So combine the hydro we got from the rain with low natural gas prices. The result is lower costs for TVA, our customers, and the consumers. So beginning with electric bills that arrived this month, the total monthly fuel cost is more than 20% below the average cost in February for the past 3 years. So that is good news for consumers. Our operating expenses were flat, and our non-fuel O&M costs reflect investments we're making in nuclear refueling outages and the repair work at Boone. And I do want to give our folks credit. We're doing a good job of managing costs and factors within our control. Greg Williams mentioned pole attachments, so let me speak to that momentarily. Our responsibilities, particularly TVA's board responsibilities, go to beyond just the cost of power to customers. They also regulate the rates that local power companies charge to ensure that the local systems are operated for the benefit of consumers and that power rates is kept as low as feasible. With today's technology, outside companies that offer cable, broadband, and similar services are always interested in attaching to the power poles owned by the local utilities. So we're working with the local utilities on the regulation of rates they charge in these situations, and later in the meeting, Dwayne Lanier, our Vice President for Operational and Regulatory Assurance, will present a recommendation for your consideration. Another aspect of the financial picture, which has been mentioned this morning, is the retirement system. I want to assure everyone that TVA takes its obligation to employees and retirees seriously. And we continue to be committed to working with the TVA Retirement System Board to improve the system's long-term health. The retirement fund, like many other retirement plans, has been impacted by lower interest rates, lower returns on investment, and higher payouts. So as an example, paid benefits reached almost $700 million in 2015, compared with $290 million 15 years ago. and the number of participants has climbed to almost 35,000, including 24,000 retirees and 11,000 employees. So today the pension liability exceeds assets by almost $6 billion, and addressing this is important to all of us. One of the priorities the board has set for us when I was first hired, and one thing we know, there is no quick fix to this shortfall. But we also know we must continue to fulfill our commitments and obligations by balancing rates and long-term obligations without negatively impacting the residents of the valley. So I believe the proposal we have made to the TVA Retirement System Board will put the system on a better path going forward while keeping TVA competitive and is fair to all concerned. So a moment on our operational performance. You know, our work to fulfill the mission is bounded by several strategic imperatives: rates, debt, assets, and stewardship. Central to all this, of course, are the people that work here and their drive for excellence in three key areas: energy, the environment, and economic development. So in energy, our goal is to deliver reliable, clean, low-cost electricity for the region, and we're pursuing excellence throughout our operations. We're working to bring Watts Bar Unit 2 into commercial operation. The team's focus there now is on completing power ascension testing and managing the remaining work, which is quite complex at this point. Current forecast is we're still on schedule for commercial operation before the end of June. And the estimated project cost is tracking to about $4.6 billion, just above the upper range in the estimate to complete. So the estimate to complete, approved by the TVA board in 2012, had a 90% confidence level. So the project is coming in very near that cost estimate. It's a pretty significant accomplishment for a project of this size. And actually, the estimate to complete was quite accurate, because the additional money that is being allocated here is for things that occurred after the estimate to complete was completed. Things like the resolution of hydrology issues, work on the dams to validate design basis assumption for nuclear plants downstream of the dam, post-Fukushima requirements, cybersecurity, things like this. So when we get done and you take into account these added things, I think we'll be within 0.5% of the original estimate to complete, which is pretty good performance on a project of that size. We've said from the start, we'll take the necessary time and steps to do the right way, which means safely, with quality, and in a manner that ensures regulatory compliance and excellence in operations. And we're not going to stray from that stance as we get closer to the finish line. And when we reach the finish line, that unit will generate enough electricity to power 650,000 homes, and will avoid emission of 6 to 8 million tons of CO2 a year. So it has numerous benefits, and we're getting close. As we continue to diversify the fleet and produce cleaner energy, we also have several construction underway on several gas units. The newest of these projects, the natural gas plant in Memphis at the Allen site. Allen is scheduled to retire in 2018, and the new gas plant will replace it at a cost of about $975 million and enough clean power for about 580,000 homes. This spring, we're scheduled to end operations at the Colbert fossil plant in Alabama. This decision is based on the economics of operating the plant and the Environmental Protection Agency's regulation of coal and other things. Compliance with those rules, which we always do, would have required us to place additional controls at a very high cost on a very old plant. Colbert went into operation 61 years ago, and the employees at that plant are ending its run safely and efficiently. It's really a good thing to watch. As they know the plant is closing, they're operating in the best it's ever operated, which is a testament to their commitment. This process of closing Colbert has been underway for some time. We're working there to place Colbert employees into other positions where we can. And I truly appreciate the employees there continuing to focus on their work safely and in the TVA tradition. A number of solar and other renewable projects are underway, and we're working with local power companies to help consumers and businesses use electricity more efficiently through the Energy Rights solution. And the TVA dams continue to prove their worth to the power system. We had a lot of rain and runoff, as I said, in January, so we got a lot of good hydro. I think it was about 125% of normals. And as you know, that has a particularly low fuel cost, so we enjoy that. In our environmental work, we continue to focus on how best to protect the region's air quality and public lands and waters. gathering public input on our plans for complying with the EPA's recent rule on coal combustion residuals, also known as coal ash. At 6 of our sites, we will need to either close the ash storage facilities in place or excavate the material and move it elsewhere. We do believe that closing the facilities in place is the better course for the environment and for the ratepayers. But we do want to know what the public thinks, so we're in the process of conducting 10 open houses on this topic around the valley. And the public comment period continues through March 9th. We also work in economic development to support a stronger economy and more opportunity for the people in the valley. We work closely with customers, public officials, economic development agencies, and others to attract good jobs and keep them here, to help existing businesses and industries thrive, and to help valley communities prepare for growth. In 2015, our combined efforts helped attract or retain more than 76,000 jobs and almost $8 billion in business investment for the valley. In the first quarter of 2016, this work helped create or retain over 30,000 jobs, and we're already at about $4.5 billion in capital investment this year. So we're off to a pretty good start this year already. This does include the announcement that Google will locate a data center near Clarksville, Tennessee. As was mentioned earlier, Google previously announced plans to build a data center in Alabama at the former Wooders Creek site. So with the Clarksville announcement, TVA becomes the only utility in the world to have 2 sites for Google data center in its service area. So I do think that says something about how we're managing our business on many fronts, but we're glad to have Google in both places. Our transmission system delivers electricity from our generating plants to the 154 local power companies and the 60 direct serve customers that we now have. That transmission system includes more than 16,000 miles of line, which is enough to cross the United States 6 times. And the reliability of that system has been 5 nines every year since 2000. So it's big and it's reliable is the short version. To make that happen, we have to have a lot of skilled people, engineers and others working with specialized knowledge and skills to do that job. And today I have one of the happiest activities I have in my job, which is to recognize one member of that transmission team as the 2016 Ike Zerang Engineer of the Year. An award obviously named for our former Chief Operating Officer, Ike Zerang. And the award this year goes to Robert Fry. It's just like the Academy Awards, Robert. The award goes to Robert Fry, who is a principal engineer for the transmission system and one of 10 finalists for the Federal Engineer of the Year. Now, Robert's accomplishments are many, but they include designing a unique digital relay replacement that helps protect our high voltage line. The thing about this design is it costs about 80% less than what we were doing previously. Project savings exceed $22 million. And so, Robert, if you have any more good ideas, I'd like to hear about them. But he is a leader and mentor in the transmission and power supply group. His boss, Jacinda Woodward, is here today, and she said, yes, he is a technical expert, he's all these things, but he is a great mentor to everybody in the department, so that's good. Robert's been with TVA 29 years, got his engineering degree right here at UTC. So Ron, I'm going to ask you to step up here and face the audience while I have a few other things to say. Come on up, stand right there so these people can see you, and I think a little applause would be good. Before I give him the award, I'm going to reveal the rest of what Joe Rich started with. We have some guests with Robert today. The first is his very proud and delightful wife, April. So April, stand up and let people see you. And also, the other Mrs. Fry, Eleanor Fry, Robert's mother. Now, it is sometimes considered impolite to mention a lady's name, not an age. But I think we can do it in this case. Ms. Fry is 98 years old. She was born before TVA was created. And she served her nation in the U.S. Navy waves in World War II. So, Ms. Fry, if you would stand up and let people appreciate you. respect. So our engineer of the year, Robert.
Mr. Johnson, I think you should know, I was quickly corrected. She is 97. By her.
Well, I apologize for that. I also say, as we were meeting in the room, she called me sugar. And for the first time in many years, I blushed. Mr. Rich, with that concludes my report.
Thank you. First, congratulations, Robert. We expect you to come back with that award. Don't come back without it. 1982 was the last time, I believe it was John Boyle that won it, so you'll be there next one. So, Engineer of the Year in the entire country, that's quite an honor. But TVA, that's the one specialized, so again, congratulations. Ms. Wright, thank you for being here, your service in the military. That's impressive. Glad to have you here and hope you come back more often. Do we have any other comments on the report delivered by Bill? I think Pete had something he wanted to say, and since he's in the box, we'll let him go first. Pete?
About the pension plan, big problem with the pension plan is dramatically underfunded. And the CDA's commitment to the employees, current employment. So obviously we must balance that with the rate of the customers, because that's the only source of money the TVA has, is what we collect from the users of electricity. And so I support the direction that we're headed to get the pension plan under control. The board is committed to pay these pensioners on down the road, and then so we don't need to kick it down the road. The future ratepayers, we need to be filling up the bucket.
Thank you, Pete. Does anyone else have any comments? Jim?
I guess I want to echo what Pete was saying, but I want to emphasize that while nobody is happy to be making adjustments to any pension plan, it's become necessary for us to address this issue. And this board would be remiss if we didn't make every effort to correct this growing risk. We've got a responsibility to the entire valley as well as our retirees, and that's the balance that we have to keep working on. And it's important that everyone knows that it's not that there's not a struggle here for all of us.
Thank you, Jim. Any other comments?
First, I'd like to thank Susan Bowman and all of the retirees and employees who have reached out to us by sending us their comments related to this retirement system proposal. And we know that it's a great concern to everyone, and to take the time and let us know your thoughts and your perspectives is important to us, and we've all taken that into consideration and will continue to do so. The proposal we've made is needed to improve the health of the retirement system and the long-term competitiveness and sustainability of TVA. This proposal would reduce cash flow pressures on the retirement system while at the same time continuing to provide competitive retirement benefits for employees and retirees. And we think that that's part of what's important through whatever solution we ultimately reach. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Joe, it is important to act now rather than to push issues well into the future. The alternatives to this proposal are difficult and undesirable, but in my view, doing nothing is not an option. As directors of TVA, we must look at all the alternatives to protect TVA, its ratepayers, and its mission. We support TVA's management's efforts to address this issue for the health of the system and of TVA.
Yes.
Piggyback on Ron's comments. Bill Johnson, whenever Bill Johnson speaks for TVA, he speaks for the board, and sometimes he gets returned fire. And I just want to acknowledge that publicly and express on behalf of the other directors, I'm sure, our gratitude to you, Bill, to you and your staff for the work you've done to try to resolve this issue. Thank you.
I have a few comments I'd like to make. First is, when I joined this board a little more than 3 years ago, this problem was brought to our attention and found out that we'd spent some time working on it. We as a board said this is one of our major issues that we've got to get resolved. It cannot continue as it is. Unfortunately, Bill and Rebecca and some of the others have been on the front line and sometimes taking the criticism, but we fully support their efforts. In our view, we are down to several choices. We either fix this problem or we have to cut expenses dramatically, which means employees, or we're going to have to raise rates. I think all of you heard earlier, we had a presentation talking about that we are a very low-income, fairly poverty-ridden part of the country, and our rates are extremely important to us. And for us, that may be the most important thing to focus on, is making sure that the citizens of Tennessee Valley can afford our power. It's also critical for us to attract companies like Google and others, the good jobs that we need to be getting into our area. And the rates we charge are critical. Those are important to us. It's important for the economic health of our community. But when it really gets down to it, we have an obligation to get this problem fixed, and we cannot continue to wait. So I think you've heard from most of the board members, we do support the efforts of management in this, and we encourage those that are on the side of having to join in that you'll quickly help us resolve this for the benefit of TVA and the citizens of this valley, as well as the retirees that are part of our system. So, anybody else have any comments?